Your body right now, at this very moment, is running at a precise internal temperature. Not roughly, not approximately, precisely. And that number, that single biological constant sitting somewhere between 36.1 and 37.2 degrees Celsius, or about 97 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit, inside your living organs, is quietly governing how fast your heart pumps, how efficiently your gut digests, how sharply your immune system defends, and how quickly your cells repair themselves overnight. Most people go their entire lives without giving this a single thought. They check the weather outside, they adjust the thermostat in their rooms, they think about how warm or cold they feel on the surface of their skin, but almost nobody ever stops to think about the extraordinary biological machinery operating silently beneath that skin to keep the inside of their body alive, stable, and functional every single second of every single day. What you are about to understand will fundamentally change how you see ordinary habits like drinking hot tea in the morning, sitting at a desk all afternoon, or going for a walk in the cool evening air. Because body temperature is not just a medical reading, it is the master variable of your entire metabolic system. When it is well maintained, everything downstream works better. When it drifts, even slightly, the consequences ripple across every organ in ways that most people never connect back to this single, invisible source. This is the story of your body's most overlooked survival system, and it is happening inside you right now. To understand why internal temperature matters so deeply, you have to start at a very small scale, at the level of the individual cell, and ask a basic physical question. What is temperature actually doing inside a living body? Temperature, in the most honest physical sense, is a measure of how fast molecules are moving. When something is hot, its molecules are vibrating and colliding rapidly. When something is cold, those same molecules slow down. Inside your body, this is not just an abstract physics fact. It is the difference between a living, functioning cell and a struggling one. Every organ in your body, from your heart to your liver to your kidneys, depends on proteins called enzymes to carry out chemical reactions. These enzymes are not machines with visible moving parts. They are three-dimensional molecular structures shaped precisely in a way that allows them to grab other molecules, break chemical bonds, and build new compounds. The shape of each enzyme is what gives it its function, and that shape is held in place by temperature. At the optimal internal temperature, enzymes fold and hold their active shape perfectly, working at their design speed and accuracy. When the temperature inside a tissue drops below its functional range, enzymes begin to lose their ideal configuration. Their molecular structure relaxes in ways that reduce their efficiency. Reactions slow, waste products accumulate, energy output drops. This is not speculation. It is the direct physical consequence of molecular kinetics. It is the same reason a car engine performs differently when cold compared to when it reaches its full operating temperature. The biological machinery inside you was built by millions of years of evolution to operate within a very narrow thermal window. And keeping that window stable is one of the most energy-intensive jobs your body performs, consuming roughly 10 to 15% of your baseline energy expenditure under thermal challenges just to maintain it. The system your body uses to manage this internal temperature is built around your cardiovascular network, which functions not only as a transportation system for oxygen and nutrients, but simultaneously as a living thermal management system. Picture a large building with a central heating plant and an intelligent ventilation system that can redirect warm air toward any room that needs it, or release excess heat through external vents when things get too warm inside. Your circulatory system does exactly this, but with extraordinary biological precision. When your core organs produce heat through metabolic activity, that heat is absorbed by the blood flowing through them. The blood then carries that warmth away from the core and, depending on what the body needs, either distributes it to peripheral tissues or releases it at the skin surface. The mechanism that controls this is called vasodilation and vasoconstriction, and it operates directly in the walls of your arteries and arterioles. When the body needs to release heat, such as during intense physical effort, the smooth muscle cells within these vessel walls relax. The vessels widen. More warm blood flows close to the skin surface where the heat can radiate outward into the surrounding air. When the body needs to conserve heat, such as during exposure to a cold environment, those same smooth muscle cells contract tightly. The vessels narrow. Blood is pulled away from the skin and redirected back toward the vital core organs, keeping the heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys warm while the skin and extremities are allowed to cool as a protective measure. This dynamic redistribution is happening continuously, every moment, adjusted in real time by the hypothalamus in your brain, which acts as a biological thermostat of the entire system, receiving temperature signals from sensors throughout the body and sending commands to blood vessels, sweat glands, and muscle groups to respond accordingly. Now, here is where temperature and energy production become inseparable. Inside virtually every cell of your body, there are structures called mitochondria, which are the biological power plants responsible for converting nutrients from your food into usable cellular energy. This conversion process involves an elaborate chain of chemical reactions, and like all chemical reactions, it is temperature dependent. When internal body temperature sits in its optimal range, the mitochondrial machinery runs at high efficiency. Electrons move through the energy producing chain at the right speed. ATP, which is the actual energy currency of every living cell, is produced in adequate quantities. Cells have what they need to perform their functions, whether that is contracting a muscle fiber, firing a nerve signal, or repairing damaged tissue. But when internal temperature falls below the optimal range, even by a degree or two, mitochondrial efficiency drops noticeably. The rate of ATP production slows. Cells begin to operate in a reduced energy state. In this state, one of the first functions to suffer is cellular waste clearance. Cells constantly produce metabolic byproducts, worn out proteins, damaged molecular components, and residual products of energy metabolism. There is a biological cleaning process called autophagy that handles this removal, breaking down and recycling cellular debris to keep the internal environment of the cell clean and functional. Autophagy is not a passive process. It requires energy and it requires a thermally stable environment to proceed efficiently. When internal temperature drops below optimal efficiency, it is not the cold itself that stops cleanup, but the resulting energy deficit that alters cell signaling. While brief thermal stress can actually trigger cellular recycling through pathways like AMPK, prolonged metabolic sluggishness impairs the overall coordination of autophagy, leading to a gradual accumulation of cellular debris over time. This in turn makes energy production even less efficient, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of metabolic underperformance. People often attribute these symptoms to ordinary aging or general fatigue rather than to the underlying thermal and metabolic origin. The relationship between core temperature and immune function is one of the most fascinating and frequently overlooked connections in human biology. Your immune system is not a single organ or a fixed barrier. It is a distributed network of specialized cells, molecular signals, and biological communication systems spread throughout your entire body, and it functions considerably better when the thermal environment it operates in is well maintained. Leukocytes, or white blood cells, which act as the primary responders of your immune defense, are constantly moving through your bloodstream and lymphatic system, patrolling for invaders, clearing cellular debris, and coordinating responses to threats. Their movement, their ability to identify foreign material, and their capacity to communicate with each other through chemical signals called cytokines are all thermally sensitive processes. At optimal core temperatures, immune cells move with greater speed and responsiveness. Their surface receptors, which are the molecular sensors they use to detect threats, are more precisely configured. Their signaling efficiency is higher. This is precisely why the human body deliberately raises its internal temperature during infection, producing what we call a fever. A fever is not a malfunction. It is a deliberate biological strategy. By raising the internal thermal environment by even 1 to 2 degrees, the body accelerates immune cell activity, inhibits the replication speed of many pathogens, and intensifies the overall defensive response in a way that helps eliminate the infection more efficiently. This deliberate use of heat as a defensive tool gives us an important insight. If your baseline core temperature is chronically drifting lower than optimal due to metabolic inefficiency, sedentary habits, or poor circulation, your immune system is constantly operating slightly below its peak functional capacity. Not sick, but not at full strength either. This slow, quiet reduction in immune readiness is almost impossible to detect directly, but has real consequences for how your body handles the constant low-grade challenges it faces every day. The digestive system is perhaps the most directly and visibly affected by internal thermal conditions, and yet most people never think about their gut as a thermally sensitive organ. Consider what digestion actually requires at the chemical level. Food entering your stomach is broken down through mechanical churning, acidic dissolution, and the action of specialized enzymes called proteases, lipases, and amylases, each of which targets a different category of nutrient. These enzymes function within a narrow thermal window, the same principle that governs all biological catalysts. Optimal temperature allows them to operate at their designed efficiency, breaking apart complex food molecules into their absorbable components quickly and completely. When the internal environment of the digestive tract is thermally suboptimal, enzyme performance drops. Large food molecules that should have been fully broken down pass further into the intestinal tract in a partially digested state. The small intestine, where the majority of nutrient absorption takes place, is lined with microscopic finger-like projections called villi. And these structures can only absorb nutrients that have been broken down to the correct molecular size. Partially digested material cannot be efficiently absorbed. It continues down the digestive tract, where it may be fermented by gut bacteria, creating excess gas and discomfort, or it simply moves through without contributing its nutritional value to the body. Beyond enzyme performance, thermal conditions also directly affect the smooth muscle lining the digestive tract. This tissue creates the wave-like contractions called peristalsis that move food through the system, and a cold internal environment slows the rate of this peristaltic movement. Transit time increases, the body takes longer to process a meal, which affects energy availability, nutrient timing, and the overall metabolic response to food. Maintaining internal digestive warmth through consistent movement, adequate hydration, and regular eating patterns is one of the most practical and physiologically grounded ways to support daily digestive performance. One of the most elegant biological systems governing human health is the internal body clock, formerly called the circadian rhythm, and its relationship to core body temperature is far more intimate than most people realize. Your internal body temperature does not remain constant across the 24-hour day. It follows a predictable and rhythmic cycle, rising and falling in a pattern that is precisely coordinated with your sleep and wake cycle, your hormonal rhythms, and your cellular repair processes. In the early morning hours, internal temperature begins to rise from its overnight low. This gradual thermal increase signals the body to shift from a state of deep repair and cellular regeneration toward a state of metabolic readiness and physical activity. By mid to late afternoon, core body temperature reaches its daily peak, which corresponds with the period of peak physical and cognitive performance for most people. Then, as evening approaches, temperature begins a steady decline that acts as a direct biological preparation for sleep. The drop in core temperature is not a side effect of sleep, it is one of the primary biological signals that triggers sleep. This thermal decline does not directly cause melatonin production. Rather, both the drop in core temperature and the release of melatonin from the pineal gland are parallel outputs regulated by your master circadian clock in response to darkness. They work in tandem to prepare the body for deep restorative sleep. Deep restorative sleep, the kind that produces genuine cellular recovery, occurs most reliably when this temperature drop is allowed to proceed fully and without interruption. When people spend their evenings in brightly lit, warm indoor environments and go directly from high arousal to lying in bed, they are working against this natural thermal decline. The body has not completed its cooling signal, and sleep quality suffers as a result. Understanding that your sleep quality is directly connected to your evening thermal environment gives you a concrete, biologically grounded tool for improving the depth and restorativeness of your nightly rest. The body's thermoregulatory system is not a fixed capacity. It is trainable. There is a well-established biological principle called hormesis, which describes the adaptive response of living systems to controlled, moderate stress. When the body is briefly and deliberately exposed to an environmental challenge, it adapts to handle that challenge more effectively in the future. This principle applies directly to thermal stress, both from cold and from heat. When you expose your body to brief cold, such as stepping outside in cool morning air, finishing a shower with cooler water, or spending time in a naturally cold environment, your vascular system is forced to respond. The blood vessels in your periphery undergo rapid vasoconstriction, pulling warmth back toward the core. Your brown adipose tissue, a specialized type of fat that generates heat directly through a process called non-shivering thermogenesis rather than through muscular movement, is activated. Your metabolic rate increases to compensate for the thermal challenge. Over time, with repeated exposure, the vascular system becomes more responsive. Its ability to rapidly vasoconstrict and vasodilate in response to temperature changes becomes more refined. The cardiovascular system essentially trains itself to be a better thermal manager. Brief heat exposure, such as time in a warm bath, a sauna session, or outdoor activity in natural heat, produces complementary adaptations. The body learns to dissipate heat more efficiently. Plasma volume in the blood increases slightly. Sweat response improves. Core temperature stability under physical exertion becomes better maintained. These adaptations are not just about comfort. They represent a genuine improvement in the body's capacity to protect its optimal internal thermal environment across a wider range of external conditions, which means the core organs benefit from more consistent warmth and more stable metabolic performance regardless of what the outside world is doing. Here's the quiet problem that sits at the center of modern life. The human body evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in an environment that required constant movement, natural temperature variation, and regular thermal challenge. In this ancestral environment, the vascular and metabolic systems receive daily practice in responding to cool mornings, warm afternoons, the exertion of physical work, and the natural cooling of rest. These constant, gentle challenges kept the thermal regulatory system sharp, responsive, and efficient. Modern life has systematically removed almost all of these challenges. Climate-controlled offices maintain the same neutral temperature all day. Cars reduce the thermal experience of travel to almost nothing. Desk-based work keeps the large muscle groups inactive for hours at a time. Since muscular activity is one of the body's primary mechanisms for generating internal heat, prolonged sitting directly reduces metabolic heat production. The body in this state does not need its vascular system to work hard. It does not need its brown fat to activate. It does not need its thermoregulatory systems to adapt and respond. And just like any biological system that goes consistently unchallenged, it gradually becomes less efficient. The result is a body that is technically comfortable in its environment, but metabolically underprepared to respond to any thermal challenge, with slower vascular responses, reduced thermogenic capacity, and a diminished ability to maintain optimal thermal efficiency under environmental challenges rather than operating at its biological best. This is not a catastrophic failure. It is a slow, quiet drift toward metabolic underperformance that accumulates over years, gradually affecting energy levels, immune readiness, sleep quality, and digestive efficiency in ways that are real but too gradual and too diffuse to be easily traced back to their thermal and metabolic origin. The good news is that the biology we have just walked through together is not a warning about something beyond your control. It is a map. And maps are useful because they show you exactly where you are and how to get where you want to go. What the science tells us is that supporting your body's internal thermal regulation does not require extreme measures. It requires consistent, intelligent engagement with simple daily habits that your body was designed to respond to. Starting your morning with warm fluids is not just a comfort ritual. It primes your GI tract, providing your digestive system with the optimal thermal environment it needs to efficiently process the very first meal of the day. Moving your body regularly throughout the day, not just in structured exercise sessions, but with frequent short walks and natural physical activity, keeps your muscular, metabolic heat production active and maintains the dynamic vascular responsiveness that your thermoregulatory system depends on. Allowing yourself brief voluntary exposure to natural temperature variation rather than always remaining in a climate-controlled environment gives your vascular system the practice it needs to stay adaptive and efficient. Eating meals at consistent times support the digestive enzyme cycle and reduces the thermal stress of large, irregular meals on an unprepared gut. In the evening, reducing your indoor temperature slightly, dimming artificial lighting, and winding down physical activity allows the natural thermal decline that your circadian biology uses as its primary sleep signal to proceed without interference. None of these things are complicated. None of them require special equipment or significant life changes. They require only the awareness that your body is not a passive container living inside the world. It is an active, intelligent, self-regulating biological system with a silent language made of heat and chemistry. And when you learn to understand and support that language, you give every cell inside you the conditions it needs to do its job beautifully, efficiently, and for a very long time.